Thank you for staying. It's a long night for you all also. Well, I get to leave. A couple things have come up that I just want to address. Actually, I'm addressing the red flag and guns in schools. But carrying a long arm in public, I had no idea about that law, but I have a thought about it as you address it. I have friends who go to Bethel Synagogue, and they pointed out that in Charlotte, the white supremacist Nazis carried signs in front of the synagogue in Charlotte and walked up and down the sidewalk with long arms, assault weapon type long arms on their back. If that's not threatening, I don't know what is, and I don't understand why it's free speech that they could carry that long gun while marching up and down with symbols against them. It's something to think about as to why I've decided you shouldn't carry long arms in public. It's a symbol of threat. My understanding is Scalia also said the Heller law ruling did not mean you could not regulate. I'll just point that out. I'm looking at the red flag law, and I see one of the problems is going to be the HIPAA laws, because I truly believe, and this is something that is not, it's almost against everything I used to believe, that we need to take due process is going to happen afterwards if the flags come up. And that also somehow, and when we pass our backgrounds check, there has to be a way of saying you will waive your rights to a HIPAA search on mental health. And I don't know how you're going to do it. But this came up with my husband this morning, that there's got to be some way to make sure you can get that mental health background check.
Let me stop you for 1 second. I think you're right on top of exactly what needs to happen, and that when I do a lot of personal injury, some of the other people up here do as well, some of the other attorneys, and when you sign a HIPAA form and you send it in, you're opening yourself up to disclosure of medical records. So I don't have the answer. It's not fully worked out, but when you do agree to a background check, someone who's law-abiding, and some of the people in this room who are lawfully carrying guns and have lawful permits, they're not the ones who will have the concern of opening themselves up to a HIPAA check. I wouldn't have a concern. It's the people that have something necessarily to hide. So you have to look at within the scope of a HIPAA inquiry, tying it down so it's not too broad. So you wouldn't want it to be overly broad, and it needs to be worked out.
But I have no idea how you're going to do it.
I think you're on top of what needs to be done, but go ahead. Because
the Parkland shooter got his guns legally, which scared me. I think the reason the red flag, if you want to look at it, those guns have to be removed immediately when those flags come up. We've developed, whether people like it or not, we have developed guns that are easy to kill many people. When my dad went hunting, and I grew up in a hunting family, I didn't because I just can't. His attitude, and he was a career naval officer, was when you go hunting, you should be able to shoot the deer with one bullet. If you can't, you better shoot it with a second one, or quite honestly, you have no business carrying that gun. And he wanted a double action shotgun. He also didn't, and this is going to go against everybody, didn't feel civilians should have military grade weapons. That's an issue that's going to infuriate people, but that's how he felt, and he was a career officer and he worked in security. My whole thing with the red flag is I want you to find a way to remove those guns and then do due process, figure out how long the due process, you wait to get the due process, but the guns have got to go first. I agree with Senator Metz on guns in schools. in the Warren Town Council last year, when they were discussing not having guns in school, a permit carrier, an older gentleman, stood up and said he'd worked very hard to get this permit. He studied hard for tests, and he wanted to be able to carry a gun to his school. But following him, a gentleman who had been in special ops and had just retired. And as he said, he trained under fire. He trained, like Senator Metz was saying. And he said it's a whole different kind of training when you're under fire than when you're not. And he said, look, here's my hunting license, here's my fishing license, here's my concealed carry. I have 2 daughters. They're in the schools. I do not want people carrying a concealed weapon except for trained personnel. And he felt very strongly about that, and yet he had been a gun carrier. You know, he had worked with guns. He knew how to work with them. So that is, plus I happen to believe that magazine's got to be limited to 10. And Gabby Giffords, that shooting was stopped when the guy went to reload to another magazine. A woman with no gun jumped on his back, and then some men came and held him down. But it was that split second when he had to stop what he was doing and focus differently that they were able to stop him. So that's something to think about. And I think really everyone said everything I was going to say.
Not a question. Mr. Chairman, Officer, I spoke with the chair. The intent of the chair, so that we're clear, is when folks testify, they leave the room so that we can fill the chairs. So if anybody's already testified, if they could kindly leave the room so that we can then fill the chairs, so that we can try and get out by a reasonable hour. How's that sound?
Thank you, Senator.
Do I want to leave now or wait?
No, you can wait, ma'am. Ma'am, you can proceed.